Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of the Business Spotlight. Today we welcome a gentleman called Darren Evans. Darren is coming to us to tell us all about his journey, his story around being the CEO of a really very, well, I want to say interesting, but it's an overused word. It's a word that I use too much, actually, but a really interesting business called AfterCloud. Please visit AfterCloud's website, have a look at it, and you'll notice statements like this. Number one, your story really matters, doesn't it? Okay, so we're going to hear from Darren in a few minutes' time around that. And also another one that caught my eye, which is really very, very interesting, and that is on a mission to preserve our personal, corporate, and cultural heritage. So, Darren, we're fascinated. Please tell us more. Welcome to the show. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, thanks, Ellis, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome.
So I guess to put it into perspective, I guess broad brushstrokes, background-wise, I've been in social care technology for a little over 25 years, there or thereabouts, and I was providing some consultancy to a very large private equity-backed software house in London a little over 4 years ago, and talking to them about their procurement processes and where they fit with local authorities, that sort of thing. And at the
super exciting stuff, right?
Oh, amazingly exciting, yeah. Part of that corporate world. At the same time, my wife and my sister-in-law were primary carers for my mother-in-law, who had a very aggressive form of Lewy body dementia.
Oh,
and yeah, it was a horrendous time for the family, as I'm sure you can appreciate. But it was really rapid, really aggressive, and literally 10 months, she died. Again, horrendous time for the family. Happens to everybody. Yeah, none of us are here forever, unfortunately. But there we are. After the funeral, we were going through family possessions, as you do.
Yeah.
And it was my son was going through a family photo album in the family house, asking my wife, Pam, who's this? Who's that? And they're a bit dumbstruck. Asked family, friends, colleagues, other people that were around. No one seemed to have a clue. And to add context to that, my mother-in-law originally came from India, as did her father. And so it added another layer of complexity. But anyway, Dylan, my son, said, well, you work in technology, Dad. Can't you do something?
Okay.
And that was the light bulb. That was the spark moment, really, which transformed everything we do. From that day on, I started speaking to people across social care, originally social care, and found that there's this thing at the end of life in residential care settings as well called a memory box. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a physical box that people put things in for posthumous occasions. So things like letters, cards, birthdays, anniversaries, personal letters, and things like that.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, that for us is a great starting point. So we digitized that process with an app called Moments.
Yeah. Okay.
And then what happened then and subsequently is a number of twists and turns, a number of pivots, as it's been traditionally known in the space. But we were a pre-COVID concept.
Okay.
So COVID came along, put a spanner, not a spanner in the works, because it helped us or aided us having conversations the world over. It was quite interesting, really. It was a fascinating period to be in lockdown. But at the same time, we trialed in real world scenarios, so hospice care effectively. Fantastic team over in Arthur Rank with early trials and Cambridgeshire. And
Darren, excuse me, we jump in for 1 second. How did you bring Arthur Rank into that scenario? Tell us more about how you engendered that relationship, or that opportunity, should I say?
Well, it's if I look back now, I think it was a referral of a friend whose who was a nurse actually at the time over in Arthur Rank, who found out about what we were doing and introduced us.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody advocating, somebody referring, introducing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's marketing, right? But it's not necessarily a proactively stimulated situation, I guess, from what I'm hearing there. But interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, it's fine. It's a conversation. I think it's great. What I think what was interesting is that there was no strategy at the time.
okay.
It was a
Okay.
heartfelt decision to do something positive.
Yeah, I see.
Um,
I see.
and we were really fortunate to have some early backing through our local partnership, Oxley, they're known as in Oxfordshire,
Okay.
which helped us build our MVP, so our minimum viable product,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and then subsequent grants to enable us to continue to develop really in real world settings. So we started to trial, and we had a number of Zoom sessions, and it was fantastic. Really, really good feedback. Then through that process, people said to us, look, this is great. It does what it says on the tin, so to speak. But wouldn't it be fantastic if, now, just to put this into perspective, we package multimedia content into what's known as moments. So images, audio, letters, and video.
Okay. I see. Yeah.
So that multimedia element packaged together as a moment, which you can then share privately and securely.
Wow.
And they said this would be great if we could plot these chronologically to sort of create a life story.
Oh, wow. Goodness me. So, right, going back as far as somebody wants to go, right? Or not. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you create a timeline, the first thing that we ask is what's your date of birth, or what's the start
Oh,
date, effectively. And it
right.
puts that stake in the ground to start the timeline.
Okay.
I'll explain that in a bit more detail in a minute, because as I say,
Fascinating.
we've pivoted slightly since then.
Fascinating. Yeah.
So yeah, so that was where the original AfterCloud was born, I guess.
Okay. So we've pivoted, we've evolved the product. Tell us a little bit then around how you. I mean, I've noticed from the website that you've had PR exposure, or editorial exposure in all sorts of different, really quite crunchy, quite high level media.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to. Let's cut this down to a word that everybody will relate to that's watching or listening, and that is marketing. You mentioned it yourself a few minutes ago. Excuse me. So how did you then expand from the trial scenario into a viable business situation? Tell us about that, Darren. We'd like to know more.
It's an interesting journey, I have to say, Ellis. What happened was we started to extend reach with timelines. What then happened took us by surprise, because people started to apply timelines retrospectively. So
Oh, I mean post passing.
yeah,
Goodness me. So we would go back into Granny's life retrospectively. Wow, interesting.
exactly. And so that started to happen here in the UK, but also in the States. So as an example, we've got a couple of timelines in just as an example in Boston.
Yeah.
One is for the ex-chief of police in
Right.
Boston States, and
Okay.
another one is for John Harold Borg. Now, the interesting fact about this one is he's a Korean War veteran, but his son is an inventor. So therefore, his son markets his inventions quite a lot, and he created a glow-in-the-dark 3D printed QR code.
Right.
And when you create a timeline, the output of it is a web page and a QR code, so that people can access the timeline and see the backstory,
Sure.
or the real-time story. And what he did was he took his 3D print, placed it on his dad's gravestone, uh, back to backed it with AfterCloud, and that created its own sort of euphoria. Really, the PR that went around that, which he then promoted, was great. Great for us. And I'm still in contact with Michael today over in the States. He's fantastic. So, and a great supporter.
Wow. What an interesting story.
Then what happened was we realized quite quickly that if you can apply timelines retrospectively, then it can actually apply for all sorts of different things. As an example, we unveiled a statue, well, we didn't unveil a statue, but a town council in Oxfordshire unveiled a statue for Dame Agatha Christie. Okay. It's called A Monument to Imagination. And it's the first one with an AfterCloud timeline on it, which tells the story of Dame Agatha Christie.
Isn't that interesting? So, wow, interesting. Okay. So people looking at the statue literally point their camera at it on their phone, and hey presto, there is the backstory to Agatha.
There's the backstory to Agatha Christie. Yeah, yeah. And of course, then that inspires other people, because you can do all sorts of things. As an example, we started speaking to museums, smaller museums. We've got a few clients in the museum space where they can productize assets. So in addition to buildings, statues, monuments, plaques.
It doesn't have to be a living, breathing person. It could be anything. Right?
Anything. Yeah, yeah. And sorry, go on.
No, I apologize for cutting across you there. I do apologize.
No, it's okay.
So there is no doubt that you've harnessed a marketing, what's the word? Sort of tsunami potentially there. But tell us a little bit about how you guys were formulating your marketing strategies. Where the cafe, the garage owner, the hairdressing salon that's watching this episode, how do we translate what you did into their space?
Well, I think this is it. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody. It's interesting, isn't it? Whether you're an individual, whether you're an organization, there's organizational heritage and history. Yeah. Whether you're an asset owner or somebody that looks after effectively. If you're a custodian, there are stories to tell. So it kind of applies to everybody. I'll give you just a small example, which was never in our initial thoughts, which has transpired more recently. So this is kind of, we're trying to remain in stealth as much as we can, but clearly it's out there doing what it does. So when you download as an individual, you download timelines. At the moment, we give you three timelines. Okay. So one for you as an example, maybe one for your spouse if you're married, plus another, which could be an asset, it could be a car as an example.
Stop that though. You're reading my eclectic office here. Okay, so I can see what you're doing there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's interesting is this came about purely by chance, in that we were invited over to the MG Car Association.
Were you? Okay.
Where
Oxfordshire based and proud, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they've got a small museum there.
Yeah.
Kimber House. To look at how we could digitize some of the artifacts in the museum. And
wonderful, really great.
Well, chatting there to Andy Knott originally, the museum manager, the membership manager actually as well. He said, wouldn't it be great if we could offer this to members? And we said, yeah, of course, they can create life stories. We can set up a sort of partnership. He said, no. He said, he said, the members, yes, but their vehicles, their cars.
1,000,000%, you can see where it's going. Yeah.
And that was the light bulb moment again. And since we're having conversations with, a multitude of, car membership clubs now. Again, because it's unique. It's a sort of digitized process of the vehicle's history over time. And the output is an interactive timeline and a web page, an interactive web page. So it's a great fit.
Tell us a little bit about how you're monetizing, commercializing this application, this piece of very clever software. Subscription model, one-off purchase. How are you going about that?
Yeah, it's a subscription model, and okay. I think the thing is I didn't really cover what we also provide, because we provide
carry on, yeah.
we provide services in 3 verticals.
Okay.
My passion has always been health and social care.
Yeah.
Creating that social impact.
Yeah.
given our starting point as well for end of life, it made
Yeah,
sense to do something that is applicable for social impact. So
absolutely.
we operate in two spaces within health and social care. One is children's services,
Mm.
and we, we have an app called Journals,
Yeah, I
which
saw that website actually.
so
Yeah,
that digital journaling aspect, which
yeah,
is provided to children looked after, so residential care settings. We have a partner in that regard, and my lips are sealed in terms of the partnership because we're at heads of agreement right now.
okay,
Um, and then we also operate in the adult social care space.
okay.
In both of those regards, we have what we call a steering group of thought leaders.
Mm, mm,
So the children's one, as an example, and again, not name dropping, but Fatima Whitbread is part of our steering group for that side.
wonderful.
And then in the adult social care space, we've got a number of really respected thought leaders that where we're looking to create life stories in community settings long before there's ever a care requirement.
Yeah.
So that as and when there is a care requirement,
Mm.
the life story can be fed into hierarchical care systems, and then better, more informed, person-centered care can be provided, if that makes sense.
It does. As you're talking to me, Darren, I'm listening to you. Well, clearly I'm looking for links back to the audience. So let's start summarizing just a little bit the headlines here. Let's expand upon one or two of them. So number one, we've got the need for, I want to say, the bravery, the courage to look for the unexpected, if that makes sense. And when you find the opportunity to evolve it, to develop it, it's they can come out of the most difficult or challenging or most unexpected spaces. So for me, there's a beautiful thread of entrepreneurialism, you know, opportunism even, but also being able to translate that product or that idea into a need, identifying a need in a marketplace. So there's something for people to really tune into and think about there. Then you made a very good point about the story. How important is it to have a personality, a storyline, something that's compelling and emotive that people can actually relate to? That's powerful. And I think also it's interesting for people to, because obviously that leans directly into marketing. What our listeners and viewers should not be doing is pressing the to use a well-used phrase in certain aspects of business coaching arenas, the tombstone marketing. Forgive the parallel there, but the tombstone marketing approach, which is, you know, like, come on, you know, we're really going to do the same thing as everybody else. You know, this is only going to lead us to one destination, right? So you're clearly marketing your product, but in different ways. If I'm hearing you correctly, we're leaning into um, uh, sort of the situations where people are underpinning the product there. You're leveraging their backstory, you're leveraging their persona, their situation. So there's really creative marketing going on here. So tell us a little bit now. Forgive me, Darren, come away from the product a little bit and take us into how you're running your business. So business planning. On your website, there's talk about there's content related to core principles, which is wonderful. How did you arrive at those, and how do you plan your business? Where are you going next? Tell us about that.
So I've been really fortunate to have gone through. We bootstrapped for 4 years, just to sort of add clarity to that. Really hard times, you know, it is, but we were very successful in a pre-seed last year,
Okay.
and from that we've started now to build the wider team. So we've been very small and agile, and now we're starting to build the wider team. But we've been very well supported from a non-exec perspective as well.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
So I've got some very heavyweight non-execs as part of the team. They're an extension of the team as I see it, actually.
Can I
Uh,
stop you there for a minute,
sure.
please? Don't lose the train of thought. The again, this is a subject that comes up frequently in spotlight interviews, is the fact that in the typical small business, the SM, Okay, let's say the SME if you like, but I want to say small business, 1 to 50 employees, give or take. There is a total aversion to this kind of subject matter in, let's say, 95, 97% of businesses out there. Coaching, mentoring, non-executives, having people on the board, people actually opening up their situation to allowing external influence in. So if you can just expand for us, you mentioned heavyweight. What does heavyweight mean? What's the value to you guys of having a non-exec or non-execs on the team?
Well, again, it's a process of choosing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm very fortunate in some of them have invested in the business as well, which adds that level of credibility.
Okay.
I say heavyweight in a sense that they are all, C-suite level execs that have, been seen and done it in quite large, well-established blue chip organizations.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked in the corporate world myself. I've managed businesses myself. So that's not, that's never in question in terms of managing the business.
No.
But I think today it's quite different in that for smaller startups, agile startups or scale-ups even,
yeah,
with the tools that we have available today, and everybody will know the onset of AI, how it's just been, the public perception of it nowadays is huge, isn't it? So, and you can utilize these tools. So you don't, even for an SME, you don't need to be huge anymore. You don't have to, not that we won't employ, but we don't need a huge team. From a technology perspective, in any case, we're a digital application or applications, a suite of. And we can be small and agile.
Perfect. But of course, we are by definition the handbrake or the glass ceiling on our own business venture, aren't we? So to have non-exec support from such an early stage, without going into the weeds of your specifics, I think please, if you're watching or listening to this show, this interview, should I say, take a leaf out of Darren's book, access that talent pool that's out there. It's we don't need necessarily a C-suite or time-served non-exec that's, been there, done it, bought the t-shirt. There may be a friend or an ally or somebody that is, just able to bring something to the plan that you can't, right? So wonderful stuff. Okay, now, in terms of culture, okay, in terms of how did you, what, talk to us a little bit about how you found your North Star, Darren. What's the compass setting here? Are you following your own, your sort of instinctive cultural pathway, or are you is it a little more specific or prescribed? Tell us about how you discovered who you are, what you stand for, etc. We're interested to know.
That's a great question, Alice. Yeah. For me, it's always been heartfelt. So that's where I mentioned earlier, that was our starting point. And one thing I didn't want to do was be a corporate type entity.
Yeah.
Even though, when we're dealing with or interacting with, partners, organizations, customers, we are professional in our approach. But internally, and I was only having the conversation yesterday with our fractional COO, who is in Derbyshire, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
So we had the conversation, and I said, look, my belief is that kindness goes a long way in business and in personal life. So that's one thing I'd like to resonate across the business.
Yeah.
A belief in our mission in terms of our social and corporate responsibility.
Absolute clarity, yeah.
Exactly, and environmental stewardship. As again, it's written on the website. But all of those things, whether it's CSR or ESG principles, we adopt them, but in a mild manner approach, and we want that to resonate right across the business. As an example, if someone has a birthday, they get a day off. If someone has a bereavement, they have a few days or a week, or as long as they require. Because it happens. You don't really get that in a corporate environment. I think it's starting to change.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the individual.
It really does. It really does. And the company. But I've been as I say, I've been in the corporate environment,
Yeah.
and it's it's a slightly different take on that. But yeah, we heartfelt, I guess, to answer your question, mostly.
Yeah, I can see that. It feels authentic. If you could take the plaudit, please.
I will.
It
Thank
feels
you.
super authentic. It feels genuine. It feels like it is the man, the team that I'm speaking to this afternoon. So it's wonderful stuff. Again, please, everybody that's watching, listening, take this on board. You know, you should not be following somebody else's North Star. Find your own. Find your own. If you don't know what that is, talk to a mentor, a coach, or somebody that does help you find it out, figure it out. So one of the questions that we love to ask people in this interview, Darren, is relating to vision. Okay, it's interwoven with ambition, because not wishing to be too cliched around the subject of thinking big. Again, it's endemic within the small business community that we don't think big enough. So what is it? You know, what is your collective vision? Where are you taking AfterCloud? What does the next 5 years look like for you guys?
That's another good question. When we started, and I mentioned earlier, this was heartfelt. It was never about finance or business, or
Sure.
it
Yeah.
was a solution to a problem, a personal problem. When we got funding and Ned's on board, it became serious.
Yeah.
At that point, it became
Inevitably.
yeah, exactly. At that point, it became okay, right. It's now business,
Yeah.
because it's not about me anymore. It's not about our personal feelings anymore. It's about return on investment for them, for our investors, etc., etc. So in terms of ambition, I think looking at the next 5 years, we have, I mentioned those three verticals. So adult and social care, children's social care, which are now established with partnerships, firm partnerships, which are credible. We have heritage space, which includes, corporate networks, organizational heritage, visitor economy, asset economy, a number of things that we are already starting to build through channel. And we've got a number of partnerships in play, as I said. And then thirdly, and this really encapsulates the much, much bigger picture, and that is consumer. Now, at the moment, we don't really market overly to that catchment, albeit it's huge.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
But I think, yeah, next 5 years, I think we will look to go through the raising process as and when required, if required, because there's no necessity actually to keep raising money if you don't need to.
Absolutely.
There are other means, and as I'm sure you're aware. But I think at some stage, fundamentally, we'll probably look at an acquisition-based process.
As in you acquiring other people?
No, I think
Or the
people.
other way around?
Yeah, someone will look to acquire us. Well, I mean, fascinatingly, just last week we were targeted by an American group that want to, look at an acquisition. But I think, it's lovely, but I think we're just too young in that respect already.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll hold on to it, I think, for a little while longer.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there are many variables there to be discussed and to be debated, aren't there? But we touched now on a really important point, and that is that, again, what percentage of people listening, watching, are actually planning okay, let's not even say planning, because that's a little cliche, but visualizing, conceptualizing their own exit, or the exit of the business. What are we going to do with this business within the next 5 years? So not surprising to obviously hear that you guys are potentially open to those kind of scenarios. That would make total sense, depending, of course, on what you want. And therein lies the starting point, doesn't it? So again, please, if you don't know what you want from your business in the next 5 years, go find out, because Darren clearly is looking to the distance, to the future, considering the options, and then reversing his way back to where he is today. And that's critical. So, okay, interesting stuff. Now, we've talked about human resource. We've talked about leveraging technology to, I want to say, limit the need for human resource, but there are other variables in there as well, but they're completely clear. you've just mentioned raising. Now, let's help people. We'll perhaps begin to bring the conversation towards a close on this point, Darren. Is how should people be thinking around raising finance? We working capital, the ability for the business to A, breathe, and B, invest in growth or scale or whatever description you want to place on it. So what are your thoughts there? What are your plans there? What advice can we give to people?
Well, I think if you're a younger entrepreneur, clearly I'm an older entrepreneur, but if you're a younger entrepreneur, I would say don't. As much as you can, don't go and raise straight away.
Mhm.
Test your theory. You don't need to spend money. It's incredibly cost effective these days to set up things, which you can then test with your ideal target market before you even do anything.
Absolutely.
So an element of caution, I guess, if you're approaching that sort of investment pathway,
Okay.
because you don't need to spend money at all. We did it the other way around. Ours was heart-led. We developed the product before we'd even thought about the market requirement, but we knew,
Yeah.
again from personal experience, that there was a need. So
Yeah, absolutely. So we've established that if we're early in our entrepreneurial career, or even if we're more mature, but we should test and measure. We should test viability and do it as what's the word we're looking for here?
pragmatically as possible, I think.
Cost effectively as possible. Okay, so let's assume that we've done that. We're now gathering momentum. We have traction. We need to raise again because we want to hire 5 people, invest £500,000 in product development, marketing, or whatever. Maybe bigger numbers than that. Where do we go?
Well, I think gather really good people around you, if not better people around you. I think that's something I've learned from larger team management over the years, is if you can pull in people that are better than you at things that you're not great at.
Yeah.
That's always something that I've used as a sort of yardstick.
And they could be non-exec, they could be mentors, coaches, they could be employees, they could be anything, couldn't they? In that regard?
Yeah, and I think also having the ability to manage up as well as down. I think that's always something I think to of benefit.
And financial institutions, so grant access or borrowing, investor, it could be venture capital, it might be other forms of third-party investment. What any thoughts there? Any ideas there? Would you recommend, for example, go to an organization that specializes in finding these sources of funding, or would you recommend perhaps going, nurturing the relationships yourself? How did you guys do it?
I think an element of both, actually. I think if someone had told me right at the outset that there's a huge pot of money out there for innovation,
Yeah.
Whether that's government led through things like Innovate or KTN, or through localized partnership opportunities like we have at the local enterprise level, or indeed through business coaches and advisors, I would say reach out and ask if you don't know. I mean, there is a huge ton of resource out there, as well as money, if you've got a really, really good inventive idea.
Yeah, absolutely, Darren. Well, listen, at this point in this interview, we usually say the following words: we'd like you to come back again. Because I think in the future, it would be really cool to meet again in this concept, and just within the confines of this concept, and discuss, what further traction. I'd also like to maybe explore a little bit more about the actual nuts and bolts of how you're structuring the business and running the business. But I'm getting the impression that it's still quite early days there. So let's maybe let a little water flow under the bridge and come back round the lap on that. Would you be open to that in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, we've got a small team of about six plus 1, 7 fractional.
Okay.
So we are growing.
Yeah.
But we are early. Yeah. Even though this year we'll be celebrating 5 years.
Yeah. Well, 5 years, and to have achieved the level of penetration, exposure, development that you're at now, and still only be 5 people, is really, again, fascinating. Let's come back at a point in the future and open that up a little bit more. So, Darren, thank you so much for sharing today and being a part of Business Spotlight. It's been a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you.
Likewise.
We wish you well with your venture. What a great story. I mean, we've had genuinely, Darren, we've had some wonderful people and some wonderful stories on Business Spotlight in the last 2-3 months, 4 months or so. But I want to say that your product and your story is unique. But what's not unique is the quality of the thinking, the quality of the people behind the story. And that's exactly what we're after here. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thank you.